Hello, my name is James M. Branham, and I'm an attorney with the Military Law Task Force of the National Lawyers Guild. And we are gathered here today to announce the kickoff of a very important campaign to allow U.S. military personnel to directly contact their congressional representatives. This campaign, initiated by a coalition of active duty military members, veterans, and GI rights groups, is called the Appeal for Redress version 2. And it is modeled after the 2006 Appeal for Redress conducted during the highly unpopular occupation of Iraq, which allowed GIs to tell their representatives that they were opposed to US policy, but in a legally protected way. Today, active duty service members are opposing US funding of Israel's genocidal actions in Gaza, not only because of issues of morality, but because US government employees violate several federal statutes every time weapons are shipped to Israel, as cited in the letter from Veterans for Peace to the US State Department. And by the way, there's a link to that in the press release. For myself, this cause is very important because too often our lawmakers make war policies without hearing from the people that have to implement. This is what makes the Appeal for Redress version 2 so important. And it's also a big part of why the Military Law Task Force, the National Lawyers Guild, is a part of this campaign. The MLTF has, throughout its history, stood on the grounds of assisting service members from our anti-imperial, anti-war perspective, but helping service members to find their own voices and to speak out. Today, we have representatives from several of the sponsoring groups, including the Center for Conscience in War, Veterans for Peace, About Face, Veterans Against the War. But we also have several active duty service members. Each of them will give a short statement, and then we will have some time at the end for questions. So to begin with, let's go ahead and I'll call to the floor Juan Betancourt.
Greetings, everyone. I am a member of the United States Air Force, currently seeking separation from the military as a conscientious objector. My vehement stance against war and strong moral objection to the ongoing genocide in Gaza, perpetrated by the Israeli government under the aegis of the United States, has brought me to this critical juncture where I must speak out against, despite the potential reprisal it may bring. My proudest act of service so far has been championing this appeal, a campaign that empowers fellow service members to securely voice their moral outrage about our government's complicity in Israeli war crimes and in genocidal onslaught in Gaza. Military members are frequently used as pawns in the game of American politics, with our beliefs and personal experiences manipulated for agendas that bear little connection to our lived reality. Although our rights are limited by our oath, this appeal allows service members to carve out a modicum of agency and break through this pernicious cycle by dispelling any apprehensions that may impede us from denouncing this unspeakable carnage. Our voice is a powerful instrument, and it is our responsibility to humanity and the principles we hold dear to speak up against this heinous act and make it known to our elected officials that we will not stand by silently while genocide unfolds. We refuse to be complicit. Rest in power, Aaron Bushnell. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll next hear from Airman Larry Haber.
Hey, thank you. Over the course of the last 9-8 months, everyone has watched in horror as the worst acts that any state can commit has committed onto a civilian population in Gaza. And even if you look at the historical framework of this, you know it's not just so black and white. There's a lot to it and a lot to unpack. The ongoing conflict and genocide that has been going on did not start on October 7th. This is ongoing and has been happening for 76 years now. And it's time for it to come to an end. And as military members, it's really our duty to utilize our rights and speak out. There's no way forward unless we act, and just staying complicit or staying silent is being complicit in oppression and genocide. So it's up to us to utilize our rights, speak to our members of Congress, and address our concerns, and call for a ceasefire and an end to the occupation, and allow Palestinians to have their human right to self-determination.
Thank you, Larry. I will now call Bill Galvin from the Center for Conscience and War for his statement.
Hi, the Center on Conscience and War was founded back in 1940 to support conscientious objectors to war. We continue to do that. And in recent months, we've had a real increase in military personnel reaching out to us, asking about conscientious objection, initiating a conscientious objector application. And almost all of them cite what is going on right now in Gaza as something that just their conscience would not allow them to ignore anymore. And many and a number of them have actually said they feel complicit. You know, they say, well, my ship is being deployed to the Mediterranean in support of Israel's war, or the airplanes that I'm repairing are, you know, taking supplies over to support what's happening in Gaza. And so we are here to say people in the military have the right to say no and to use their voice to try to change the policy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. We also have a statement today from I believe, Sergeant Johnson, I believe from the U.S. Army. Sergeant Johnson, due to some of the concerns of potential reprisals for participating in this, has decided to give a written statement, but is not going to read it here. So I'm going to read it on his behalf. But again, I mentioned this is to kind of show just the risk that service members do take in speaking up. We've created this appeal for redress campaign to make it possible for service members to engage in what's called protected communication, able to speak directly to Congress. But even in making legally protected communications, already members of this project have been facing pushback from their commands. And so I want to reporters to be aware of this and understand that context, because it's unfortunate that so many are being stifled. So anyway, here is Sergeant Johnson's statement. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sergeant Johnson, and I am an active duty service member in the United States Army. My following statement is not a representation of the DoD. I personally believe it is everyone's moral duty to stand up for what is right, and that moral duty is deeper for all service members. All soldiers have an obligation to maintain humanitarian rights and to uphold a high moral compass. No service member enlisted to be complicit in genocide, and no service member should be forced to. This appeal for redress will give service members an opportunity to stand up for what we all know is right. Thank you, Sergeant Johnson, for making your voice heard. Also, before I go on, I also want to mention for all of the active duty participants in today's press conference that they are speaking in their own capacity. They are not speaking on behalf of the military. It should be obvious, but the military doesn't always seem to get that memo. So we're going to make it super obvious. They are speaking in their own capacity. Okay, we next have our next speaker will be, I believe is it Will Hopkins? Are you speaking on behalf of VFP or someone else?
Yes.
Okay.
So, hello, everybody. My name is Will Hopkins. I'm the new executive director of Veterans for Peace. Humbled to be included among the brave voices that have come before me in this press conference. Be they American, Israeli, Palestinian, or something else, be they white or black or brown, every child is innocent and fully human and worthy of protection. That American tax dollars have been spent to kill over 14,000 children in Gaza. It's absolutely unconscionable to me and to so many others. It is also, in the opinion of the international and human rights attorneys that I have spoken to, a pretty blatant violation of the conventional arms transfer policy, the Foreign Assistance Act, the Arms Export Control Act, the U.S. War Crimes Act, the Leahy Law, the Genocide Convention Implementation Act, and possibly some other pieces of legislation and laws. No service member should be put in the position of having to take part in spreading violence or giving weapons to something which violates their conscience or which violates their oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws that are established under that Constitution. No service member should have to stand by while innocent children are killed. No service member should be afraid of speaking out because of reprisals on these grounds. And I hope in this moment, the people of our country are ready to rally behind brave service members like Juan and Larry and Sergeant Johnson, who are willing to put their careers and livelihoods on the line to speak out from a place of conscience. It's time for our country and for all of humanity to consider the dignity of all humanity and all children and forge a path forward that supports that dignity. The rights of soldiers to exercise their voice is critical to the authenticity of the freedom that our country plans to represent. So thank you, Larry and Juan and Sergeant Johnson, for speaking out today. Thank you to the rest of this coalition for standing behind them. I appreciate being here.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Shiloh Emmeline from About Face Veterans Against War.
Thank you. Before I begin, I'd like to bring in the memory and the conviction of our sibling, Aaron Bushnell. He was not alone. And I'd like to bring him into this important conversation today alongside all of the veterans of conscience over the years, both past and living. So thank you for having me on today. My name is Shiloh Emmeline. I'm a Marine Corps veteran who deployed both to Kuwait and Iraq in 2006 and 2007. I'm now the operations director with About Face Veterans Against the War, formerly called Iraq Veterans Against the War. We've been an organizing home for veterans of conscience for 20 years, coming out of the legacies of Veterans for Peace and Vietnam Veterans Against War. About Face is an organization of 2,000 post 9/11 anti-war veterans who organized to dismantle the military-industrial complex and the militarization of our communities. As people who have been part of the U.S. military, we are intimately familiar with the harm and the violence being carried out in Gaza, the West Bank, and the Greater Palestine. It's precisely because we were once the harm doers that we now raise our voices and use our veteran privilege to echo the pleas and the demands of the Palestinian people and their cry for a ceasefire and a right to return. I commend each of the active duty members who have taken the brave step of listening to your conscience, of having the moral fortitude to use your voice for the sake of others, and for exercising your power for redress and calling for a ceasefire and an end to the US-funded genocide of the Palestinian people. I'm proud to call each of you my comrade, my sibling, and know that there's a whole community of like-minded veterans ready to welcome you home. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiloh. So we now have some space for questions. And so for those of you who have questions, if you want to put them in the chat, you're welcome to. If you'd like to unmute yourself, you can do that as well. And I think we have a few questions I know of that I know from some reporters who couldn't make it today. I'll ask them a little bit, but first I want to open the door for if anyone who's present has questions for our panelists, please go for it. I know one of the questions, again, that I heard coming into this is that there is this perception by many that service members do not have First Amendment rights, that they cannot speak up. And I was wondering if any of your organizations would like to speak to that as far as why this appeal is different and why what's at stake, and why, what can happen when service members speak out, but also what resources are there for them if they do.
I could basically say that I mean, the Constitution does apply even to folks in the military, even though there are restrictions based on military regulations. But the DoD policy is very clear that military personnel have the right to be politically engaged as long as they are off duty, off base, and out of uniform, and make it clear that they're not speaking on behalf of the military. Of course, there's a few other things. You can't, show disrespect to your chain of command, and that would include the president as the commander in chief. But within some limits like that, military personnel really do have the same kind of rights everyone else has.
Absolutely. Also, I'll add on that part of the specific piece of the appeal for redress is that by framing this as protected communications, it does give service members even more rights than they might have otherwise. And there's a few regulations on point. One of the biggies is DODI, Department of Defense Instruction 1325.06. And I'm going to put a link in the chat for this because it's very central to what we're doing here. Basically, because of federal statutes, because of this regulation, but also because of the Constitution, which says that any person has the right to petition their member of Congress to express themselves. This campaign was specifically created to allow service members to express themselves within this very clearly delineated free speech protection. It's not to say that other forms of speech are not protected. They often are. But this kind of speech, particularly speech directed at Congress, is especially protected and has some extra enhanced protections. Okay, another question came in from the chat. Where should active duty folks turn if they wish to become a conscientious objector? And I'll add to that, what about if they have concerns that may not exactly be conscientious objection, but they have issues of conscience or ethical concerns? Who should they turn to?
They could certainly reach out to us, the Center on Conscience and War. Our number, it's centeronconscience.org is our website, and from there you could get a lot of the information you need. But yeah, conscientious objection is provided under military law. For people can apply to be discharged or to be reclassified as non-combatants. But for folks who have ethical or moral concerns that might not qualify as conscientious objection, still give us a call because we can maybe talk things through and figure out what options you do have. And besides our office, the Center on Conscience and War, you could also reach out to the GI Rights Hotline, which also the counselors there are quite familiar with these issues. And that number is 877-447-4487, I believe.
Also, I'll mention for religiously oriented people, there are several different organizations that specifically work with people of conscience from a religious perspective. And CCW can often point service members with those concerns to some of those groups as well. Also, I'll mention one of the questions is also just about general free speech issues, and that's where I would also recommend the Military Law Task Force of the National Lawyers Guild. We are an organization of lawyers and paralegal counselors who are engaged in this work, and we do a lot of work, particularly on the free speech side of things, helping service members to know what are the risks about various kinds of speech, and also what they can do to protect themselves as much as possible. Okay, Shiloh asked, what happens after a service member fills out the appeal for redress? Where does the appeal go from here? And actually, I think what might be good, this fits in really well, Mike. I'm wondering if we could share screen and maybe could you kind of walk folks through the appeal for the process on the website, maybe?
Sure, yeah, no problem.
Because then we can also talk through, what happens after someone fills out the form and everything.
Okay. First of all, we have a link on our homepage that goes to this page here that you see on the screen. And this is what people first see when they click on the link to the appeal for redress version 2, whether they get it through our homepage or someone else sends them the link that gets the whole thing started. So that's what you first see. There's an introduction to what it is. There is a link to a brief history of the 2006 appeal for redress. And this is some language here that I'm sorry, this is the news release. This isn't the okay, let me back up just a second. I'm sorry. Okay, here's our homepage, and you can get to the appeal from here. I was showing you the news release. Okay, this is what you get. This is the appeal for redress. And it starts with some, again, here's the history of the version 1. And then James and Bill and Kathleen put together this legal warning so that members of the military are clear about what their rights are. And we try to make it as clear as possible in several places that there's assistance available if you're getting hassled. So then you click below to see which version. There's 5 versions of a letter. I won't go through all of them, but you can see when you click through there, there's some variation in their sentiment. And so whichever one you choose, you just click submit, and it goes to this form, and your name and address and contact information is in there. And please note that the one thing that we had to ask your participation in is this doesn't automatically put in your branch of service. So you're asked to put that in, and the only field available for that was occupation. So put in your field, your branch of service in that field, and you click next. And then this is the message that goes to your senators and representative in the House. And this is the letter that was selected. As I said, there's some variation in the language of each one. And it winds up with your name, your city, state, and zip code, so they know that you are in their district and your branch of service, so they know that this is coming from a service member. And then you click send message, and it goes to this screen, and this is where the various people it's addressed to. These guys all want, well, I'm not a doctor yet, but who cares? This is to the various people that want your prefix, and then you click deliver, and it goes to them. And then this is what you see next. Your message has been delivered to those people. Please share with other active duty Guard or Reserve members you may know. And then you can share via these 2 options.
So then from there, once, of course, these letters goes to members of Congress, a few things could happen. One is that the service members may get a letter back from the member of Congress, which would be fantastic. And if you get particularly anything of interest in what if it's not just a form letter, please let us know. That would be very helpful to know where members of Congress stand. But we also know that in some case, we do expect there's at least some chance that some members of Congress may not like these letters. They may try to report them to their chain of command, and we have to be ready for that. That said, by law, these communications are protected. Absolutely. This is a really clear-cut area of law, and that's where having this network of support ready to support service members who may encounter problems, whose commands may choose to participate in illegal retaliation, commands need to be on notice, and we're making it very clear. We stand ready. There are organizations ready to go to bat for anyone who catches grief for participating in this. And it's important that their voices be heard. Unfortunately, our nation for too long has tried to keep our lawmakers insulated from the concerns of ordinary people, but especially from service members. And that's why this is such an important campaign.
James, if I could, I can, without sharing a screen, I can just briefly say what you get. Each person who sends one of these things automatically into their inbox, in their email comes a letter that says, "Thank you for participating. This message was carefully vetted by attorneys and it's legal for you to send," and et cetera, and includes the number again if people need legal advice. And it says, "In solidarity, Will Hopkins, Veterans for Peace, Kathleen Gilbert, Military Law Task Force, Bill Galvin, Center on Conscience and War, and Oliver Valenzuela Neto, About Face Veterans Against War." So that's what people get in their inbox after they participate.
Another important question I think may come up is, what can civilians do in support of this campaign?
Spread the word. We've all got friends in the, friends, family members, whatever, share it on Facebook or social media, do what we can to get the word out so folks in the military know about this.
Mm-hmm. Another question from the chat: can active duty folks join About Face, VFP, and other groups like that? And if so, how? And I'll also add on that, what are the legal ramifications? So I'll address the legal ramifications, but if others can talk about the practicalities, that would be awesome. Legal ramifications is that service members can join organizations like these. There are commands that may try to frame this as being participation in an extremist organization. And if you catch that kind of grief, please refer your commander to DOTI 1325.06, because it makes it very clear that these kinds of organizations don't fit under that criteria. And of course, be ready to call the MLTF, GI Rights Hotline, other groups. What about, though, could someone from About Face and VFP talk a little bit about what's involved in joining your organizations, and especially for current troops, active duty folks, what that experience might be like?
Well, I'll just mention real quickly that active duty people can join Veterans for Peace for free. Will can tell them how they can join, but we have free membership for active duty.
There's not much to tell you. Head to the website, click on join, and you'll see a free field right there. So sign up, and we'll have your back.
And the website's veteransforpeace.org.
Thank you.
And could someone from About Face share a little bit about how folks can join About Face?
Sure, yeah. Similarly, you can just go to our website, aboutfaceveterans.org, and check out our work, our mission, our values, and then join. And like I said, we're a growing organization. We've been around for 20 years. We actually came out of Veterans for Peace. So we have a long history connected with Veterans for Peace, and we're a big healing community that's just really, really here for one another. So active, and we do have active duty members. We're all post 9/11 veterans. So yeah.
And then if I could just add in, hi, my name's Ollie, and I'm a member coordinator at About Face. I spend 0% of my time informing your command that you've joined my organization. We're not going to go, there's not a public record of your membership, and anonymity is available to you if that makes you feel more comfortable. We're not here to put you on display or to utilize you. We literally are like a community that is centered on healing, and we would love for you to join, and we'll do whatever we can to protect you in that process. Thanks.
Let me add here that, joining one of these organizations can be evidence of sincerity for conscientious objectors who are seeking to get discharged. And one of the folks I have very recently worked with, part of his evidence was, as somebody who's on active duty, I can join Vets for Peace for free, but I support their work so much that I paid the dues anyway, because that's where my heart is.
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of free memberships we like the best.
Right.
Will, do we have for any of the speakers that presented today, do you have any final thoughts, anything that, and especially thinking about the active duty folks, any things that you want to share that you didn't get a chance to share yet? We have a few minutes left.
What I want you who are on active duty to know is how much I admire you having the courage to stand up and speak out while you're in uniform. I remember how scary it is to not believe in what you're doing. You know, I was against the war in Iraq while I was there, and I did my job and I kept my mouth shut because I didn't have the spine and the guts and the conviction that you have. And I just want you to know not only that we've got your back, not only that we support what you're doing, what you're saying, not only that I admire you, but that you know, I look at you and I see a courage that I wish I had.
Appreciate that, Will.
Mm-hmm.
And
I just want to mention, sorry, Bill. I just want to mention real quick that the time is of the essence. Military members need to speak out and utilize their rights and submit an appeal for redress and notify your members of Congress that you don't support what is going on. It's our commander-in-chief has already spoken out and called for a ceasefire. It's obvious we're trying to get aid in, and we've been unsuccessful thus far. So there is no more waiting. This is an urgent. This is the least you can do, and for a organization that really harps on honor and integrity, this is your action. This is something that you can do to actually uphold those values instead of participating in the actions of war that don't uphold those values. Thank you.
I was just going to say that I've talked to Jonathan Hutto in the last couple of days. He was the sailor who initiated the initial appeal for redress, and he is humbled and honored that you all are, you know, are taking this action, and he wishes us the best with this campaign.
Mm-hmm. Sergeant Johnson shared in the chat. I'm going to read this out. He said, "I personally have joined VFP. William is right. It is scary, but our actions hold so much more weight since they are coming from active duty members. As Larry said, the time is now. Tomorrow is not guaranteed for so many Palestinians. We were brave when we were enlisted, and we need to be brave now and stand against the actions of Israel." I'll also mention, in the spirit of us all trying to find our voices, trying to find our ways to speak up, I think it's important to mention that for myself, I'm participating in this, supporting this, because of my belief in Palestinian solidarity as a Jewish person. For myself, as a Jew, I believe that the principles of shalom, of solidarity, are uniting forces that should pull all human beings together and that should drive us towards peace. And so I do want to speak clearly about this, because there has been, unfortunately, a slandering of Jewish peace activists, of many people trying to say that somehow we are disloyal to the Jewish people because we are speaking up in defense of Palestine, in defense of Palestinian people, and in calls for Palestinian solidarity. And I also want to say that for many people who are participating in this, supporting this, we're coming from very different philosophical, religious perspectives, but our point of commonality is a recognition of common humanity and the belief that what is happening in Gaza cannot continue. Too many people have died. It has to stop. Well, to finish our time together, we'll just mention that for anyone following this later, that we do have some points of contact if you have further questions, particularly for reporters who are watching this recording later. We encourage you to not hesitate to be in touch. Several of us are standing ready to answer any questions, clarifying questions. I'll also mention for our active duty participants today, some of them are going to be available for further conversations with the press. We are, though, going to be having those initial inquiries go through Bill Galvin with CCW. And the reason for this is that we do need to have some preliminary conversations before, just because of some of the extra risk that active duty service members face in talking to the press. And so we want to make it clear we really want those conversations to happen, but we also are doing our best to protect the service members that we admire so much. So do want to mention that, though, those folks are available for interviews and whatnot, but we'll have this information in the press release with the contact. And other than that, thank you so much for all of our panelists speaking today, and for those of you watching later, thank you so much. Please help us get the word out about this campaign. It's really important. Thank you.